Good day, everyone. Let me begin by introducing myself. I am Khorshed, speaking from Chittagong, Bangladesh. At the very outset, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude for inviting me to speak on this auspicious occasion, World Indigenous Peoples Day 2023. And I thank UNESCO and Translation Commons for putting up this international symposium on the topic of indigenous community, focusing particularly on South and Southeast Asia. Uh, Let me admit in the very outset that I'm not an expert or an academic on this issue per se, but as a translator myself and a critique and a cultural activist, and also for the advantage of being a resident of Chittagong, a very nearby community from this Chittagong hill tracts, where most of the indigenous people live in Bangladesh, I generally take an interest on this issue, like indigenous people, their lifestyle, their culture, their language, literature, and also the state of translation of their literary works. Uh, uh, Taking that advantage, I would like to say a few words about the topic I have selected tonight, which is the Chakma community, their language, literature, and its translation. Bangladesh has about 2 million indigenous people, both living on mountain areas, which is called Chittagong Hill Tracts, and also in the plain land of other parts of Bangladesh. And around 45 communities have been identified so far, with as much as 30 to 40 separate languages being spoken by them. Chakma is by far the largest community with a population of nearly 300,000, and they have a language of their own which has also a script which is not very common in these indigenous languages. Most of them have their language they speak, but not many of them has a script of their own. The Chakma script is called Ojatara. And in terms of anthropological information, these community have migrated to Bangladesh, particularly in Chittagong Hill Tracts area, roughly around 400 years before, mostly from the adjacent Myanmar or the Burma and the other nearby regions, and they have embraced Buddhism as a religion. They speak the language which is precisely known as Changma, not really Chakma, Changma language, which is a kind of affinity with some dialects of Chittagonian language, the plainland language in Chittagong. So much so that there is an understanding uh, that this is basically an ultimate culminating point of the Chittagonian language, which linguists like Dr. Shuniti Kumar Chatterjee, Dr. Shahidullah, they have also kind of agreed to this proposition, though this is not really entirely acceptable by the community, and there are some debates going on, but this proposition has some merits on it because Chittagonian people can understand Changma language and Chakma people can also understand that language. But the script, if you say the script wise, there's old Chakma script is not really in use these days. But it used to be used quite frequently in earlier days in their religious texts, like Gozen Lama, that's a very earlier literary text by poet Shipcharan, and also those play, the cultural play called like Radhamon Dhanapadi. They used to be used by their indigenous healers community to write down their medicinal prescriptions and description of the plants. Genkuli, a community of wandering birds, uh, preaching love and songs of harmony. They used to use this language. Likewise, Ubu Giti and Uli Giti song writers and singers, and also in many other ancient texts, we find this script. But these days, honestly, we rarely see this script being used to express their literary acumen. What happens mostly, there are proliferation of Chakma literature, no doubt about it, poems and stories and songs, but most of them use either Bangla script or some even use Roman script to write those down, and then someone, either he or she, translates into Bengali, because they are also well conversant in Bengali language, or they collaborate with someone, Bengali speaking friends or a colleague, to translate that in Bengali. This is the predominant scene, and I can name quite a few texts in regards to this, like Kavita Chakma. She has a poetry collection book called Joli no Udhim Kittei. She has translated this both into Bangla and English in a single volume collection. In Bangla it calls Jole Udbona Kano, and English it's known as Why Mustn't I Flare Up? Similarly, another one, Shamari Chakma, she also did a wonderful job a few years back, like in 2018. She collected an oral history of the people, those lost their livelihood, their homes, their lands due to that great inundation which happened in around 62, 63 at the hydroelectric dam in Kaptai. And the whole community was wiped out, and they had to uh, leave the country, made a great exodus to either Agartala or Mizoram or Arunachal, and Samari Chakma traveled to those faraway lands, collected that story, of course, in their own mother tongue, and she wrote it down in her own Changma language, translated a few of them in Bangla herself, and also a friend of her, like Naeem Mohaimin, based in New York, teaching at the Columbia University. He did some translation of it and presented it a few years back in a documentary film and a presentation in Chobi Mela in Dhaka. So this is the predominant picture, and same thing happens to many other writers like Mrittika Chakma, Mukul Talok. They also write in Srigant Dipankar. They also write in the original Chakma language. There's no doubt about it, but writes in Bangla script. And this is the reality that they have to go with a phenomenon called diaglossia, two language. It's a common scenario, and maybe these days is becoming triaglossia. They have to learn their own language, Chakma language, the Bangla language, and English. And accepting this reality, I think they can do a good job in creating awareness of the literature, in translating it, in sustaining it in a larger scale, because the Chakma people has the has higher literacy rate than the average national rate of Bangladesh, and a lot of people are in overseas, and they are conversing in many other languages, including English and French and other languages, so they can do this translation. And in Bangladesh, I think we have the responsibility to make sure that their mother language is preserved, and we should provide, at least in the primary level, the education through their mother tongue, and this interactions between the mainstream community and the overseas community, and using technology, this digital technology. I think this translation should happen in a more in a vigorous way, and make their presence felt, both in terms of their existence, their influence in the society, and also in terms of their the asset of creative expression, language, and cultural output, and knowledge. And that's the way forward in terms of my humble opinion, observation. I think I'm getting slightly over the time allotted to me, so I better stop it here. And I thank once again everyone for giving me a patient hearing, and for inviting me to speak on this occasion. Thanks once again.